Now ask that the live stream is started.
I can confirm, Mr. Chairman, the live stream is now being started.
Thank you. So welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. In addition to the Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room, we also have some councillors joining our meeting remotely. I will now check that they can hear us, and we have Cabinet members joining remotely. Councillor Toynbee.
I do not believe has joined yet, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Welcome shortly, hopefully. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I can see and hear you, Leader. I've got a slight problem with my camera. I'll try and fix it.
Okay, thank you very much. Group leaders or their representatives and scrutiny chairs, Councillor James. Councillor James is not with us yet. Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews is with us in the room. Councillor Wilding.
He is joining if he's not already joined.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I can see and hear.
Thank you. Councillor Howe sends his apologies. Councillor Swinglehurst, I think I've seen you.
Good morning. Yes, receiving you loud and clear. Thank you.
And Councillor Stark, I saw you as well. Yeah.
Afternoon, everyone. I can see and hear you, Leader.
And we have apologies from Councillor Balderson and also Councillor Jimman.
And Councillor Fagan.
And Councillor Fagan, thank you. We also have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. I'll now formally open the meeting. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you're speaking, and please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives where appropriate to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will also call on scrutiny chairperson to comment on behalf of their committee. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only Cabinet members physically present in the room may vote. So item 1 is apologies for absence.
Sorry, I thought I'd fixed that problem, but clearly I hadn't.
Just sorting out some of the tech stuff. Good. Sarah, do we have any more apologies other than those mentioned?
No, you've already noted.
Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest for items on the agenda today? I see none, thank you. Third item is minutes, to approve and sign the minutes of the meetings held on the 12th of January 2023. These were published in Supplement 1 to the agenda pack. Cabinet members, are you content the minutes are an accurate record? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 4 is to receive any questions from members of the public. We have received 2 questions from members of the public, and a response to each has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. Those members of the public who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting to ask their questions live. Supplemental questions are to be no more than 1 minute in length and must include a question. I will exercise some leniency, but if I ask a question to stop speaking, then must please comply with my request. I will now ask the clerk to confirm if a supplemental question is being asked for each of the questions. First of all, from Mr. Mackay.
He does not have a supplementary question.
Thank you. And secondly, from Ms. Reid.
I've not received anything at this point, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 5, questions from councillors. There were no questions from councillors, so I'll move then on to item 6, which is reports from the scrutiny committees. So the recommendations from the Scrutiny Management Board of 17th of January on the budget will be addressed under agenda item 8. There are 2 reports to present from the Environment and Sustainability Scrutiny Committee. These have been published. Councillor Stark is chairperson and may wish to introduce the recommendations from the committee. There will be no discussion, The recommendations are simply recommendation is simply to note the recommendations from the committee and commit to providing a response from the executive within a particular time period. So if I can ask Councillor Stark to introduce this item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be brief because I know you've got a very challenging agenda today. First of all, thank you to everyone who provided reports or attended the 2 committee meetings on flooding and the local plan and provided evidence. That was very helpful. General overview in the local plan, that came about from the committee looking at the process of the consultation on the local plan and also the outcome of the 3 stages that were conducted. And we, in doing that, Leader, we consider them against some of the success measures in the environment part, the county plan, air and water quality, and of course our ambition to reduce carbon emissions across the county. So that is the context in which the 13 sort of findings are put before you today. On flooding, we looked at flooding and very briefly on the risk of fire from drought. Having heard from the fire chief that the latter was lowish, we then focused on flooding. In terms of actually the context there, we looked at the 5 objectives under the local risk flood management strategy. That's understanding the risks of flood, managing the likelihood and impact of them, helping communities to help themselves, managing early warning and response rate and recovery from flooding, and finally promoting appropriate and sustainable development. And Leader, you'll notice that that has a very much a resonance across to the development of the local plan as well. So under that one, we came up with 10 findings, and that's the context, Chair, and I offer them to you from the committee. Thank you.
I will probably won't actually give it.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. I think it's nice to see such relevant and up-to-date items being considered by the Scrutiny Committee. Obviously, with flooding we've had in the county, that's very helpful to do that. So we'll move on. I'm sorry, the recommendation is to recommendations are set out in the 2 reports. The recommendation is that the cabinet is to consider those recommendations. So I'm not really sure I need to vote on that. But, well, the recommendation is that the reports be noted. So if I could just have that show of hands that those reports be noted. Thank you very much. Okay. I'll now move on to item 7, which is the council tax reduction scheme. And this is to recommend to council the 2023-24 local council tax reduction scheme. The report starts on page 11 in the agenda pack, and I'll ask Councillor Harvey to introduce this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. This report outlines the proposed level for the council tax reduction scheme here in Herefordshire for the coming financial year. In 2021-22, the level of discount under this scheme was increased for the first time ever to 100%, and since then has been maintained at that level. And here in this report, we propose that this 100% discount is maintained for the coming year, and in doing so, make provision in this decision report for over 11,500 households across the county to pay no council tax whatsoever in the coming year. As an administration, we are determined to ensure that hard-up households are supported during this cost of living crisis and throughout the development of this year's very difficult budget. We have maintained that determination. Planning to waive all council tax payments for households in qualifying who are in financial difficulty is one of the important ways in which we are continuing to take a targeted approach to the delivery of financial assistance to those most in need. In the budget consultations that we've undertaken, there is strong support from the public also for maintaining a 100% discount level for this discretionary provision. And I commend the report to Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Any Cabinet members wish to comment or ask questions? Councillor Chowns.
Just to say that I'm really, really pleased that as an administration we've done this in past years and maintained it this year, because it's such an important means through which we support those who struggle most with council tax. So I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for Finance and colleagues for ensuring that this is taken forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Tower is just nodding agreement. So it's quite a complex subject as to you know, how people are entitled, how they apply. The papers, I can't remember how many pages, there are a lot of pages of quite a complex kind of process to go through. I don't know whether Mr. Lovegrove, you'd like to comment on the difficulty of assessing whether people are entitled. Do we have a lot of people applying and writing and phoning in? How does the sort of mechanism work?
Leader, thank you. Yes, apologies, there are over 130 pages in the guidance, but it follows the legislation about how to operate these schemes. So we don't expect people to have read all the pages before they can apply. If people want to get in contact with our council tax colleagues, either by phone or email, we also work very closely with a number of people who act as advocates, so citizen advice, age concern, a lot of people dealing with people in the are veterans from serving from the military and the like. Very much speak to the team, they will help you navigate through it. They will run the means assessment as quickly as possible to give people an answer as to how will they comply or are eligible, and then they'll take them through the process of awarding it. So the actual process for individuals is straightforward and easy. This is just providing the evidence of the technical nature of the scheme, making sure we comply with the legislation. As Councillor Harvey said, acknowledge that we are offering a scheme in advance of the basic legislation requirement.
And last year there were 11,500 households, I think it is, who applied. That is a considerable proportion of the population, so it's obviously very much valued. So I'll now pass, if I may, to
David.
comments. I'm sorry.
It's not visible on the main screen, but Councillor Davies has actually got her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the online. I'm not sure why it's not showing on the main screens.
Yeah, Councillor Davis. Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Councillor Jones. The joys of hybrid. So just a quick one, really, I think more for me to understand all of this. Firstly, I'm hugely proud about the fact that as an administration we've managed to do this for 3 years now, and long may it continue. I suppose from our perspective, one thing is we know over the next year that a number of households are going to fall into that gap where they are going to require 100% discount from their council tax. And I just wondered, from a budget perspective, and this might be Mr. Lovegrove or it might be Councillor Harvey, how do we gauge that need? So how can we forecast what the amount of money that we're requiring, i.e. how many people may in the next year fall into that gap? And I just wondered if you could explain that.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Davis, there's no hard and fast way of predicting what the future will be, but the team work very much with the existing claimants, understanding where their position is looking at the evidence that we have from all the other data sets. So work very closely with the DWP. We have information about the households that are claiming universal credit and the trends, whether they're going up or down. We work with the third sector, who also provide that insight into the expectation of things. And as you say, that the next 12 months are very uncertain in terms of what's going to happen in the economy, impact of inflation, what that means for households. So it is a forward projection, which is based on a number of assumptions. We will only know whether those assumptions were right in a year's time when we look back, but I'm confident the team have very clever process to recognise it's going to be that 11,500 households that are affected. You can see in the paper the breakdown between people of working age and non-working age. We're expecting that to say broadly similar for the future. So we keep a close eye. I do hope that actually it's less people claiming, because that means households have more money coming in, which is always a good thing on that. But also, if people are listening in who are struggling to pay their council tax but don't quite reach this threshold, please come and speak to us, because there are other ways that help can be given, and certainly we are very helpful, and I'm keen to have a conversation about rescheduling payments for people to meet people's personal budget arrangements. It's better to work with people to find a solution, enable them to pay. It takes a bit of time, much better to do that.
I think Councillor Harvey is coming in.
Yeah, just to add to Mr. Lovegrove's remarks, the level at which we've budgeted in terms of assumptions made about working and pensioner households that are likely to fall into the category for making claims under this discount scheme. We've got that level set at the highest level that we experienced for claimants during COVID, when we had a lot of people on furlough and unable to work for various reasons. So that 11,500 households is pitched at that level, and we think that is reasonable. But as Mr. Lovegrove says, there are other discretionary schemes that are available for households that fall just outside of the qualifying criteria for this scheme. So we are making other forms of assistance available.
I think that's a really helpful description of where we're making those assumptions, and the fact that we're working with the DWP and we're looking at retirement, we're looking at basing it on the point where it's worse at COVID. I agree with you, Andrew Lovegrove. Fingers crossed we won't have to have that as many people as we've assumed, but to know that the help's there and to give that advice to people. Just a request, maybe after this meeting we could pop something in our communications just advising people that if they're struggling, who to contact within the council.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I can't see if there are any other hands up on the screen. I assume there aren't. So I'll go on now to group leaders to make comments. I don't know whether Councillor James has joined. Thank you. Okay, Councillor James.
Hello?
Yeah, Councillor
Can you
James.
hear me? Sorry,
Yes.
my apologies for arriving late. I wasn't aware where I missed the fact and forgot probably that we were starting at 1 o'clock, and I was travelling, and I'm travelling back from Brecon. But anyway, that's by the by. I'm sorry, I've only just joined the meeting, so I haven't really done that. Is it the council tax?
Council tax reduction scheme, Councillor
Yeah,
James.
well, I've always supported that.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Excuse me. This provision is really, really necessary. And so the Conservative group favour the inclusion of such a scheme. It's something we promoted when we were in administration. We now note that it's 100%, and given the financial circumstances, excuse me, this is very, very necessary. It's vital because there are those we acknowledge who really, really do struggle to pay their council tax. But the scheme will be needed more than ever because there's the cost of living increases that we know, and people are really, really struggling there. but it will definitely be needed, seeing that if it's the case that this council administration votes through a 4.99% increase. We're mindful of those people who really struggle to pay, and we've heard the figures about just how many people are in that position. But we're also very mindful of those people who cannot benefit from this scheme because they obviously earn more than the scheme will allow. However, they are equally exposed to struggling with paying bills, given the cost of living and all of the energy prices bills that are coming their way. So the only way to deal with a bigger issue is, rather than have a benefit scheme, to address the issue where we're concerned about those people who are struggling to pay but don't benefit from this scheme, is to keep council tax increases to a minimum. But unfortunately, we will see later in this agenda that the intention of this administration is to go for the maximum increase of council tax. I was really heartened to hear from Mr. Lovegrove that there are possibilities of those who don't meet this criterion but do find that they're struggling can reach the council to talk about how they make their payments. So really, two questions. How are we promoting this scheme in general? And also, how are we going to promote a situation where the council tax team are willing to talk to people about how they make their payments when they might not benefit from this scheme? Thank you.
Mr. Lovegrove, you may want to.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of other schemes, so there's discretionary housing payment and other schemes that are funded from government, which we administer, which have a different approach in terms of the eligibility. So that's one of the ones, and we have other support with a number of other arrangements. In terms of how can people speak to us, it's on our website, how to apply. You can ring or make email contact with the team to look at this. We also work very closely with all our third sector colleagues. We have an approach of one front door, so it doesn't really matter whether people come direct to us or Citizen Advice or Age Concern or the various Legion, those types of arrangements. So that's an arrangement that works well in Herefordshire to make sure that anybody that is struggling or is concerned about paying their council tax, doesn't really matter who you make the first contact with, it all comes back and we help people. So, and I think as we've just discussed, after this meeting, we'll again remind people how to do that, and I think it'll be part of the communication coming from Cabinet. But it is all available on our website, and for the central organisations we work with, we have those strong links.
Very much. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. Most of the points have been raised. One thing I'd like to ask Mr. Lovegrove or Councillor Harvey, the number of claimants, 11,000, which has been stated on a number of occasions. Do you know in percentage terms, Mr. Lovegrove or Councillor Harvey, how does that compare with neighbouring authorities? Are we well ahead because we're a lower in area? So if you could tell us, I don't expect you probably don't know, but if you do, that'd be most useful. And could you also tell us the fact that it's coming to the end of the financial year, how many people are struggling or are seriously in arrears, whether business or household rates at the present time? The True Independent support the principle of the scheme, but I'd like to know those issues if you could help me. Thank you.
I don't have the details to hand, but my understanding is we're not an outlier in terms of comparison to our neighbouring authorities, but I'm very happy to provide a written briefing note that deals with where we sit compared to other neighbouring authorities and our statistical neighbours, so areas like ourselves. In terms of the collection rates from council tax and business rate, I'll provide a written detailed note of that. But we're seeing that those collection rates are about where we'd expect them to be. On there, we have a number of conversations with people, and I think it's we've said before at these meetings, we have reduced the use of court action and those type of things. Much better to have an arrangement with people so they can pay their council tax or their business rates over a period of time. But I'll provide a written answer.
Are they similar to other years, Mr. Lovegrove?
They are similar, yes. So for the life of administration, they've been a broadly similar arrangement. So to the credit of taxpayers and businesses, people do make sure and try and keep on top of their bills.
Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, the independents for Herefordshire totally support this scheme. We're obviously very happy that the present coalition introduced the 100% scheme and will continue to do so. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether Councillor Harvey wanted to make any comments at this stage. Or
No.
move the recommendation. So I think I'll move to the recommendation that the recommendations are set out in the report. Cabinet members, are you in favour? Show of hands. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 8, consultation outcomes and draft budget proposals. This item is to recommend to Council the proposed 2023-24 budget and associated medium-term financial strategy and Treasury management strategy. This report starts on page 151 of the agenda pack. Supplemental papers have been published covering the recommendations from the Scrutiny Management Board and responses to these, and an updated version of the Directorate Savings Plan as set out in Appendix B. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. After delivering last year on the biggest programme of in-year savings that this council has been faced with, and the county and the country starting to move on from the worst effects of the recent pandemic, this should have been a budget in which we looked forward to better times ahead. Instead, we find ourselves impacted by the worst economic and cost of living crisis in a generation, alongside spiralling food and fuel costs, which disproportionately affect the least well-off of our households. It has been highlighted by the Local Government Association and the County Councils Network that in this year's local government settlement, ministers have deliberately made the assumption that all councils must raise their council tax by the maximum allowed for government funding statements to hold true. In addition, government has designed this year's settlement to drive out funding some councils holding reserves in order for them to achieve balanced budgets. This perfect storm of circumstances has driven many councils beyond the point where they are able to construct balanced budgets for themselves. I am pleased to say that despite service demand pressures and the impact of inflation in excess of 10%, this is not the position for us here in Herefordshire. Herefordshire's funding settlement is, once again, lower than the majority of our comparator councils, and includes a freeze for the 3rd year running on the rural services grant received to offset the additional expense we face in delivering services across our sparsely populated and predominantly rural geography. And like most councils, and in line with government assumptions, we have needed to propose the full 2.99% uplift in general council tax and implement the 2% uplift ring-fenced for social care. In reluctantly exercising this local council tax raising power, we are very aware that it places a further burden on our residents at a time of unprecedented difficulty. Our public consultation has indicated that we continue to have public support for the principle that the better off amongst us continue to pay more towards the delivery of council tax services, and that we target financial support to assist the least well off. We have already heard about the proposed 100% council tax discount scheme, and in addition to this, we make provision in this budget for 1.7 million of discretionary funding for continuing our hardship scheme to support households in ways other than providing council tax support. I am pleased that as a Cabinet we're able to consider here today a balanced budget which continues to deliver investments in community infrastructure and service transformation, whilst continuing to provide all our statutory services and the majority of our discretionary services, which so many of our residents experience and value on a daily basis. The 4-year medium-term financial strategy, which looks out beyond the time frame of the coming 12 months, is built upon prudent planning assumptions and has future years funding uncertainty of only around 2% of our gross income. Our budget proposes to deliver £14 million of savings and efficiencies across all our service areas, and in doing so, we're taking into consideration the feedback received from residents and businesses through public consultations undertaken both face-to-face and online. Our total capital investment programme exceeds £140 million for the coming year and continues to deliver a wide range of community infrastructure, transport, education, public realm, economic development, heritage and social care investments to strengthen and improve daily life for our residents across the county. Our general reserves remain at the top end of the statutory requirement, which is for 5% of our turnover, and our earmarked reserves make provision for a wide range of known and unknown future demands upon our resources. Our approach to treasury management continues to be prudent and cautious, taking into account expert advice from our advisors and our officers. I would like to thank all our officers and staff for the huge amount of hard work that has been put in over many months to build this budget, and to thank the members of Scrutiny who have devoted many hours to exploring the detail of this programme that we're presenting here today, and for their comments and recommendations which form part of today's agenda pack. I note that unlike 4 years ago, no shadow budget has been developed by any opposition groups wanting to provide an alternative approach to delivering council services the other side of the local elections in May. Neither have any budget amendments been submitted by opposition groups to receive the same level of scrutiny and challenge that has been applied to the plans before us today. Consequently, the proposals before us are the only ones which are available and have gone through the level of rigorous examination required under our Constitution. Despite the difficult circumstances we continue to face, this budget proposes to spend more money delivering services to Herefordshire's residents in 2023 than we have spent in 2022, and includes a wide range of exciting and innovative programmes in addition to the many important day-to-day services which comprise the core business of our council. I will now hand over to my Cabinet colleagues to highlight some of the key aspects of the proposed budget for their portfolios.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. So who would like to come first? Councillor Crockett.
Yeah. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Leader. And a big thank you to Councillor Harvey. This is a really difficult time of year, isn't it? And we take everything into consideration. This is the proposal from this administration, absolutely right, Councillor Lester. And it's being considered here today because we have no alternative proposal at this point. So from my perspective, communities and wellbeing, I just want to give a bit of context to the background information that's led to this proposal. And I'm sure you all agree, we understand that adult social care is a large area of spend for this council and every other council. We provide care and support for adults from the age of 18 to meet their eligible needs. The demand for this adult social care continues to grow, and this is not likely to change. And that's according to our local demographic data, which was updated in 2021. However, in Herefordshire, we have over the last 5 years, through Talk Community, a wider community response to people's needs. This continues to expand and grow and is welcomed by many, many villages and market towns. It's widely accepted that investment in community assets alongside formal care provision to support people to stay in their own homes for as long as possible promotes better outcomes for Hereford and people. So from these previous comments, the transformation strategy for community wellbeing focuses upon strengthening and diversifying that community and preventative offer alongside improving some of our internal processes. So some of the key focuses on this strategy are recruitment and retention. We need to stabilise and ensure our workforce are engaged. This is going to help because it will reduce our reliance on expensive agency staff. We also consider edge of care work. Examples of this are, and I know Councillor Swinglehurst's ears will prick up, exploring a Herefordshire home share scheme. We need to deliver and co-locate at primary care network level, including enhancing falls prevention work. We have integrated models of care. Examples of this extend to the current Shared Lives scheme and delivering the technology-enabled living programme. And finally, we need to process efficiency. Examples including improving our financial processes, looking at direct payments, moving to financial assessments online if possible, and exploring options for support for self-funders. As I've just described, that's a tip of the iceberg, and there is a huge amount of work going on in this area. And I thank my director and obviously the team that are behind everybody in the adult and health and wellbeing service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crockett. Who would like to be next? Councillor Harrington, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you to the officers and cabinet member for preparing this budget, which is a balanced budget. I'll ask a couple. Well, I'll mention a couple of specific issues, but then I'd like to ask the Section 151 officer some questions which he may or not be able to answer. We have been able to get a balanced budget within my portfolio, particularly within the public realm. We were looking at as much as £1 million having to come out of that budget. We were able not to have to do that. We got a slightly better settlement than we thought, and we were able to protect the majority of the work that we need to do through the public realm. However, it's important to note that our public realm is considered about £315 million behind in terms of maintenance and getting it back to the condition that it should be in. And that is something that, as far as I can see, is only going to continue to deteriorate. I'm grateful that we have done the work around permitting. We didn't have a permitting scheme in Herefordshire before we came in as administration in 2019. We were able, therefore, to make sure the utility companies come to us, pay for the licence, and that we can fund the inspection of the work they do afterwards, which goes a long way to protecting our highways. And obviously, a lot of the work that has been done by utility companies in the past has been of a very poor standard, but the capacity wasn't there to be able to go and monitor that and to fine or to charge reinstatement. I'm glad we're able to continue the Lensman's grant. It's been difficult to get it out, but we've got it through the door for this year. That means for the next 4 years as well, we'll be able to allow local communities, our parish councils, to do more work and possibly at greater value when you consider what they're able to do compared to our major civils contractor. I know that we're looking at what more parish councils could do in terms of carrying out work at a local level. We don't want to get into the situation of double taxation, so we're going to be looking to see how we might provide them with some sort of funding to allow them to do more work in the future. I note Councillor Lester's comment about trying to achieve not raising the council tax. I note that Shropshire to our north, which is Conservative authority, is raising their council tax by 4.99. I notice that Worcestershire to our east, which is Conservative authority, is raising theirs by 4.49. I mean, we know that when we're in opposition, it's easy to say things that are aspirational without having, unfortunately, the responsibility of working out how to balance such budgets at very difficult times. I remember that our Section 151 officer has estimated that we're about £100 million down a year in revenue in 2023 or 22 when we last did this, compared to 2011, and that's primarily through the withdrawal of the revenue support grant, which brought us in excess of 62 million in about 2011 and brings us not much, well, under £1 million now. And I just wondered, you know, in terms of the solution, local authorities like Herefordshire, which didn't have the returns on council tax efficiencies that more densely populated authorities have always relied on that revenue support from the government. We are cutting not only into bone now, we certainly trimmed off any fat, we're cutting into bone, we're actually probably removing limbs without being too grotesque. I mean, I can't see a plan. I speak to our MPs who consistently voted for the reduction in central government support, consistently voted for the reduction of the revenue support grant from that to £62 million a year down to, as I said, under £1 million. In my estimation, have cost Herefordshire over £1 billion, well, sorry, beg your pardon, over £500 million of revenue in that period. They can't provide me with an answer of what's the solution, what's going to give. We can't just keep going on in the way that we are. If we'd have had to take that £1 million out of the public realm budget this year, I genuinely don't know whether we could, hand on heart, say that we could provide safety to our residents. I mean, at the moment, I'm sure many residents think that there's too many potholes, but we do try and manage them as best we can, and we are keeping the right side of safety as opposed to damage to vehicles on roads. But I just can't see the solution, and it's probably an unfair question, and the Section 151 also can only answer it in the way he'd like to, but I presume at this state, at this rate, and in the state and the situation we have in terms of funding now, the trajectory is only just going to go down in terms of what we have available to us as a council, and all the efficiencies that we'll try and continue to provide. That will be a losing battle against that fact that if you're not having fair funding, you know, you cannot manage your authority, you cannot provide the value to your residents, and you know, services suffer. And I'd be very grateful if Councillor Lester or anyone else could provide evidence of them asking our MPs about that, or whether they believe that we don't need that central government support. But just on that one point, I presume that you know, it looks bleak if we continue as we are.
Mr. Musgrove.
And one other question: roughly what percentage of our budget goes on adult and social care? If you can give us a bit of an idea around that. I think it's around about the 75% mark. But I think it's helpful for the public to realise how little money we have left to do stuff that is not desperately statutory and required.
Thank you, Leader. I guess my role as the 151 officer is to help the council get to a balanced budget, and that's what you've got in front of you here. So what the Cabinet's proposed budget balances and works and is compliant. In terms of is this enough money, I think that's really more of a question for you as politicians. And I think, as Councillor Harrington has pointed out, there has been a steady reduction in support and financial support from government over the last decade or plus. On there, as mentioned, revenue support grant now is less than £1 million. It has gone up slightly this year, so that's a positive for the county. On there, in terms of the public realm, as we've got in there, there are proposals within the capital programme to spend significant amounts on the public realm and the revenue support grant. Then, as you say, we could always spend more, and our public realm contractor has highlighted that it would be in the region of £300 million to bring all of our road network up to the state as it was, in a good state. So these are the choices and dilemmas we face as a council, and we face as politicians in setting the budget. The budget you've got in front of you works both on a revenue and capital basis. We could certainly spend more if we were given more money. And I think that my observation is that any extra money we could spend well. In terms of the percentage terms, in terms of on page 154, you can see the breakdown between community wellbeing, children and young people. So the net budget is £68 million for community and wellbeing, which is predominantly the adult social care, 50 million for children and young people, and we're looking at a net budget of 193 million.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Leader. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to officers within my cabinet portfolio for their dedicated time, patience and expertise during this, for me, the most difficult time of year. Budgets and budgets with decreasing funding from national government, moreover, are not fun for anyone. It's with regret that we are expected by those at national levels to increase our council tax by the maximum 4.99% without triggering an election. I remember on the first budget full council meeting, there were proposals for us to use the reserves. I remember this argument happening again over the next 2 years for various other reasons. I remember receiving a lot of criticism when we argued that the rainy days weren't actually here yet. And then I think we can all agree that what we're faced with is one hell of a storm. A cost of living crisis, a war in Ukraine, a whole swathe of strikes throughout the UK for our public sector workers, unscrupulous increases in bills despite the companies making millions for their top 1% colleagues, and a national health and social care crisis in the wake of COVID. And after years of austerity, a personal favourite from this Conservative government. Forgive me if I get choked when I talk about this. It's really difficult to be an NHS worker and living in, seeing and breathing austerity. There will be a few comments on some of the savings within my area, not least the removal of waste collections on a bank holiday. Instead, the collections slip in a day. This is the case in many local authorities, and we all may have experienced this over the Christmas break. I did. Please take this into context. One day later, to have your bins provided by a service that was the only one I can find evidence of not missing a collection during COVID. This in return for being able to spend more money within an ever increasing health and social care or educational needs area seems more than reasonable to me. You will see two new areas of savings and revenue generation within the properties and estates portfolio. This is me listening to the public who have said consistently through our budget proposals that they want us to spend less money on back office and estates. This is why we will be moving out of properties that cost us lots of money and where they cannot fit into our strategic objectives, especially regarding the climate and ecological emergency. This will be based around evidence, and surveys are currently underway to identify those properties within our strategic asset review, and I will provide further information at a later date. The other area is where we will seek to have full cost recovery for our commercial estates. This will be done fairly, ensuring a consistent approach so that those properties that are identified and purchased as commercial will not cost us money. I am proud that we've been able to do an equality-based balanced budget, focusing on those most vulnerable people within our communities and where our money will make the most difference. The saving and revenue generating areas within my portfolio do just this. They put people first.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Leader. I share my colleagues' frustration at central government's lack of funding for local government, but I won't repeat those comments. I just want to take the opportunity to talk briefly about my portfolio areas, economy and environment. So the Directorate, Economy and Environment Directorate, covers all sorts of things, much bigger than the focus of my portfolio. So I just, a couple of points, just draw colleagues' attention to the fact that the economic development team, which is shown on, I think, page 204, it's net cost of less than £1 million, and it has an immense benefit to us in terms of generating investment in capital projects, particularly that have a really positive impact for the community within the county as a whole. We just heard last week that we've been allocated almost £20 million from the Levelling Up Fund. We, have done well at accessing the limited amounts of government funding that are available, and of course, in the last year, we also had the full sign-off on £22.6 million of Town Investment Fund investment too. So the work that team does, it's a small team, it is having to make savings under these budget proposals, having to kind of cut our cloth to fit what we've got, but it's an incredibly successful team in generating wider public benefit. And later in this meeting, we're going to be considering the 2050 economic plan, which also has been facilitated by that team, and just really kind of represents what an effort we're putting into working in partnership with businesses and other stakeholders to really kind of develop this collective vision and to work collectively to bring this investment into the county. So I think that's an example of where relatively small amounts of money spent by the council generate really significant knock-on benefits. And we were just last night in one of our market towns talking with local businesses about the ways that the council supports their prosperity and sustainability. On the environment side of my portfolio, colleagues will have noticed in here that one of the demand pressures within the economy and environment budget is increases in energy costs, again, increases of nearly £1 million in next year's budget period forecast in terms of energy costs. As a council, we, like everybody else, are struggling with rising energy costs, and that is why it's so important that we've been putting this effort into energy efficiency work. We've been really focusing ourselves. Councillor Davies was just talking about making sure that we ensure that our property portfolio is as energy efficient as possible. And indeed, we had a fantastically successful wider conference facilitated by the environment team last week in partnership with the Herefordshire Climate and Nature Partnership Board to support businesses in the community as a whole to identify ways that they can cut costs, cut energy use and cut carbon at the same time. So I think, that I often talk about how proud I am that my portfolio brings together both economy and environment. They work absolutely hand in hand, and this is a great example of that. So long may we continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tyler.
Yeah. Thank you, Leader. I've got a very small budget. I've found this really extremely hard looking at delivering efficiencies and savings within my portfolio area. And it came to light through our Star Chamber meetings, highlighting the pressures that we need to look at and options how we're going to achieve this. The transformation programme for regulatory services, we've had to look at the ways we can find our new funding and additional income, and looking at the introduction of fixed penalty notices and increase in fees and charges. But regulatory services is a statutory duty, and we have to deliver this to protect our public and communities. This is a significant amount of work for regulatory services and back office officers. I have a small budget, nevertheless, I still have to achieve savings and also secure revenue streams. During the last 12 months, the enforcement teams have worked tirelessly to protect our communities. For instance, the community protection team have prosecuted 17 defendants fly tipping. We all hate seeing rubbish scattered across our countryside, but we have to consider and deliver and make sure that is removed. They've also seized over 100,000 cigarettes, and being a detriment to over 300,000 worth of illegal vapes. We have to remove that from our communities. 50 rogue traders at the detriment of 40,000. We've also had issues with absenteeism from school. Officers have had to deal with that. The animal health team have responded to 6 avian flu outbreaks, visiting over 10,000 premises. We have to do that to protect our communities. The other end of my area is CCTV. This is critical to keep our communities safe. We've had funding from the streets, Safer Streets 3 and 4. Without that, we could have increased our cameras from 47 to 216 cameras across the city. This was also highlighted from West Mercia Police, because we need to protect our women and girls because they feel vulnerable on our streets. We have increased security on the Great Western Way, Bishop Meadows, King George playing fields and other key locations. We have to continue to fight for more funding. We are currently looking at additional CC projects in Ledbury, Leominster and Ross and Wye, because we need to make our streets safer for everybody, and we have to do that. They've also had a new contract for staffing commencing September 22, which sees a single contract now covering both the county-wide CCT system and Maylord Orchards. This is imperative we do this, because the high definition of cameras is instrumental for critical evidence involving crime and disorder in the county. The strategic housing team. To date, we have delivered 224 affordable homes through our registered partners. We are anticipating 290 by the end of March. This is a huge achievement in our current climate for the team. With the assistance of DLUC and internal matching, we have delivered and refurbished 5 rough sleeping accommodations with a 6 to complete at the end of January. We've also secured 1 self-contained flat and 5-bed shared houses from private landlords to look after our Ukrainians and homelessness. We are continuing to deliver that. We also have received over 5 million funding from government through the COVID period to deliver this. We have a new temporary accommodation policy and policy framework in place, and our new allocations policy going through ModDoCA. We've also got the Talk community. We've now got 69 community hubs across the county. We have increased footfall now to our website, providing the services and help that everybody needs when they need it. We've also made a decision now to reallocate our £2 million for super hubs. This will enhance our existing hubs and support the groups that need it. The hubs are still evolving, and we are being criticised about that. But in time, it will be a vital service for our county. Finally, one good news about one of my capital projects. We delivered the 2 air quality monitoring stations. The capital budget was approved on the 12th of February 21 for 192,000. We delivered 2 under budget of 80k, and we did that all through project management installation. These will be hugely beneficial to determine the particles and nitrogen dioxide in our areas going forward. It is difficult. We achieve our savings that we can do, but I can't thank our officers enough and my director for doing that for me. It's been a difficult task for me, and I can't see how, whilst we've achieved efficiency savings this year, the continued pressures of savings for local authorities is challenging, and it upsets me immensely that we have to keep cutting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler. Councillor Toynbee, I don't see your hand raised. I don't know whether you...
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Leader. Thanks. Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm sorry not to be able to be with you in the room today. Thank you for your support for the Children and Families budget, for your ambition for children in Herefordshire, and for committing to put our money where our mouth is. I'm grateful to Scrutiny for their input. I'm grateful to all the staff who've worked on this and pushed on finding savings wherever possible without damaging our service delivery. And I'm grateful for the progress that has now been made on making sure that in future there will be more detail and better data for all of us on the budget for this directorate. There is a lot of investment in our services for children and families in this budget. And if there's ever a time to do that, this is it. We've got to be bold, we've got to be ambitious. As we know, councils in the situation we're in, working our way through an improvement plan, typically have a couple of years of very heavy investment. I'm acutely aware of the need for expenditure to come down in future years. There's a lot of work to do this financial year, as we all know, and the more progress we make, the more efficient we will become, the more permanent staff we will have, the stronger grip we will have on placements, and the less cost will be pushed further down the line. So on top of our commitments here to speed up progress in our statutory children's services, we've also all agreed that we must invest in supporting families before they reach crisis point. This is a choice over and above our statutory duties, but it's essential. It's a manifestation of our priorities, of our determination, of our vision, and of our understanding that we really must think long term. And that is something that has maybe been lacking in the past. We know, as colleagues, as many of you have said, that this is a really, really difficult time for families in Herefordshire. And like councils all around the country, we as a council are the safety net. We're facing increasing demand for our services on top of inflation, on top of this cost of living emergency, and yet another 1 year local government settlement, which is very unhelpful. So at the very time central government is saying it can't afford to keep up with decent investment in public services, it's the very time when people need us more than ever. I understand the stress and pressure that all our directorates are under, and how hard it is to balance responsible budgeting, a fair deal between directorates, efficiency, and making sure our residents receive the services they deserve. And I believe we've got that balance right in this budget. Thank you very much.
I think those presentations have all shown the extraordinarily lengthy process we've gone through reviewing the budget for this current year. We did start, I think, probably May or June last year with our first meetings looking at the forward plan. We knew the efficiencies which were likely to be needed. We spent a long time very carefully looking at every single part of the council. Yes, we will be proposing a 4.9% increase in council tax. That's regrettable. With inflation at 10%, just by one measure, energy costs have gone up by a lot more than that. Which means the council's costs themselves have gone up. I've been at several national conferences where even sort of the Conservative government are forecasting that in the future it's going to be a lot harder. So we're going to have difficult decisions to make again next year. And we as administration are not prepared to kick the can down the line. We need to grasp this nettle and make some difficult decisions. So I'll pass now, if I may, to the group leaders for their comments, starting off with Councillor James. I don't know whether you've arrived at your destination, Councillor James. You're on mute, Councillor James, at the moment.
I think he's heard enough, he's gone back to post.
Well, shall I come back to Councillor James later on with me? Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing from Councillor James shortly. Yes, the Conservative group, we note the intention to raise the council tax by 4.99%. We welcome the debate on the 10th of February when it goes to full council. But just make some observations and comments for the benefit of this meeting. It's encouraging to see the government settlement was more than was expected. We must thank the government for that. I think the general point must be for all councils across the land that the government can't continually increase local government funding with a blank cheque, because this will just increase the national debt. Local government has a responsibility to be financially prudent. And so, you know, it's up to councils to ensure that they do the very best, as well as rely on government funding. I note from the capital projects, which we will discuss later on, that government assistance for roads is increased. But when I just make the point for Councillor Harrington's benefit, I know he says about the revenue support grants, and that's his continual bugbear, and he's absolutely right. You know, a decade ago it was much, much, much more, but that's just not how local government sustainably could be funded anymore. However, in 2019, this council received £12 million towards grant maintenance of roads, and in 2021. Nearly 20 million. Last year it was 15 million pounds to be spent on roads, and next year it's going to be 15 million. So since 2019, that's 63 million pounds for road maintenance. So to say that the government just is not spending money on councils and giving them support where they need it is not an accurate picture, and we receive that money gratefully. And you know, the key for us as a council, and the key for the administration and for Councillor Harrington, is to make sure that that money is well spent. But it's not to say that there's no money at all. So I think it's fair to make sure that members of the public are aware that government does give money towards highway maintenance. So in order to balance this budget, as we've heard from Councillor Harvey, it requires very ambitious savings. 14.1 million, I think, 14 million pounds worth of savings. And the Conservative group are very sceptical that those savings can be achieved in total. This council's got a very good record of achieving savings over a long period of time. So, you know, it's not all to say that it can't be achieved. But, you know, our scepticism is demonstrated by the fact that, you know, just to balance the books this year, this administration's had to delve deeply into the reserves. And, you know, reserves are significantly down, which is a concern to us. The cost of children's services continues to be a huge worry for everyone. I've heard the comments made by Councillor Toynbee, and, you know, she fully acknowledges, you know, that there are challenges to be had, and we're still not clear on whether the improvements that have been made will take the necessary effect. So concerns are there. Our main concern is the proposed increase, 4.99%, and what this will have on families and their household budgets. The agenda report helpfully states that this amounts to an increase of £7, just over £7 a month. But you have to consider the level of council tax as it's set at. People's council tax is already very high, and by raising it yet again in the face of inflation and fuel bills that are skyrocketing, this is something that we're really going to struggle to support. Now, we do appreciate that there are challenges, and poor Councillor Harvey's had a really, really tough time. And I mean that genuinely. It's extremely difficult to now negotiate these financial situations. But, you know, it's positive to see that the council tax base is increasing, and that is a positive. So we argue that the solution is, rather than continually increase the council tax in a very challenging economic time, we've got to focus more on growing the economy and providing those homes so that we can get more revenue in and get a better, we also need to get, as a council, a better grip on spending so that you don't have to continually ask taxpayers to pay more and more year on year. As I say, we welcome the debate on the 10th of February. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lester. Passing on then to Councillor Matthews.
Where do you start? It's bad enough for cabinet members, I accept that. But as a group leader, you have to look right across the portfolio where you can concentrate on your own local issues and try and, come to a conclusion of where improvements could be made and where we've gone wrong. When I discuss things at my parish councils and with my constituents, the first thing they say to me is, what about the 50-odd million you wasted through incompetence and mismanagement with children's services? And when they put things like that to you, so my first question will be to the Director for Children's Services, are there any more court cases pending that might cost us even further expenditure. And secondly, it says here that you told us a few weeks ago that the number of children in care was decreasing rapidly. It says here, increase in looked after children and agency fostering is an extra £5 million. As that started to go up again. So could you just answer those two questions before I go on to capital issues, please?
Thank you for the question. So there are no cases that I'm aware of that will leave us in a situation where there's a significant financial risk. In relation to the numbers of looked after children and the pressures on fostering, and so the position is a reflection on the year. Obviously, during the last year and the last 18 months, we saw a significant rise in the number of children in our care and pressure on foster placements. And I was quite correct in a separate context in a meeting recently where I also reported that the rate at which children are coming into care has been reducing steadily over the past 9 months.
Going on to Councillor Harrington. Councillor Harrington, I understand, we all understand that the finances are difficult, but it's been writing on the wall for the last 4 or 5 years that we got to a stage where we were going to have to provide more for ourselves instead of depending on more and more from central government. That's been obvious. So in my humble opinion, the only way you were to build this county into a prosperous concern is by improved infrastructure, improve the local economy to provide the value and the rates and the well-paid secure jobs. There's nothing at all, I'm afraid, folks, that you've done over recent years or in this budget that will address that issue. So could I ask you, Councillor Harrington, two of the things, as you know, I've been on about for some time is the Eastern Relief Road and the Bridge Solid upgrading. Now, you've got in here highways infrastructure of 16 million. Can you tell me what's happened to those programmes? Have they been totally dropped out of the thinking, or what's the situation?
Thank you, Catherine Matthews. I presume you're saying that you don't expect or don't want any funding to come back from central government. You think we can survive purely on our own income. I think you're wrong in that, but that's your opinion and that's fine. In relation to the Eastern Crossing, we have that project funded and on track, and you'll be getting an update in the next month on that. In relation to the commitment I gave you about examining the bridge solids and also the 49 to 465 links, that will be provided as part of that work, and you will have an update on that.
No, I did not say that I did not expect the central government to provide reasonable and sensible funding. What I said was that it was obvious things were going to be tighter, and if we wanted to move forward, we'd have to be better value for money and more careful with our thinking and our business acumen. That's what I was saying.
Indeed, and that is why we've done things like review our public realm contract, and there'll be some detail on that soon as well. We are desperate to try and see where we can find those efficiencies, which I know you also care strongly about. But the reality is we will not continue as a viable authority without proper government funding, as simple as that. And we should stop trying to pretend we can. And Councillor Lester's point about the capital funding we still get for some road surfacing, that is a 33% reduction in real terms since 2011, and the revenue is almost completely gone. So, you know, let's be realistic about it. You know, the county is crumbling. It is as simple as that, and we cannot function as we are functioning now without government support. And why should we? We're not an independent kingdom, we're part of the United Kingdom. We should get funded fairly.
Once again, Councillor Andrew, you've strayed from the very point I was making. I was not suggesting, I repeat, I was not suggesting that government should not supply adequate grants. What I was saying was things were tight and those grants were obviously not going to be as generous as we'd like them to be. So don't get the wrong message going out that I'm saying that. I'm not saying that. What I say is we've got to make ourselves more efficient and more accountable.
I will meet you halfway and agree to both.
Well, as I said, I can't understand why you have difficulty with it, because as I said, I'm all for government properly funding local authorities, but at the same time, we've got to put our own house in order and start growing our own local economy. And without that, this county is going to be stagnating for many years to come. It's a very long and involved budget, Leader, as you say, you can raise these issues. I haven't gone through it thoroughly with my group yet. So as I said, we'll make up our views by February, but there's a lot of worrying issues in there. One thing that seems to be, there seems to be a general purge on the motorist in every way, shape and form, and I can't quite understand why that should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Of course, later on we're going to talk about planning for the future with the Herefordshire Big Economic Plan. I'm sure you can provide comments on that, and that's all about the future of the county and consulting with business, which I'm sure you'll be pleased about.
Leader, sorry. It's just, there was quite a statement then about it's against the motorist, etc., but with no context given. I just wondered if we haven't looked through the budget properly with your group, the public deserve to have the facts on that. In what way is the revenue budget that talks about looking after children in care and adults in care as a priority, what part of that is the attack on the motorist, Councillor Matthews?
I'm not talking about those two budgets. I'm talking about the increase in car parking charges, the increase in on-street parking, and every other thing, and the movement cameras that are coming in. All right, that's a viable case. But it's putting more and more pressure on the motorist, and there seems to be a bit of a purge. Yes, we want to get the motorist out of the city centre, but that's not the way to do it. If you want to get the motorists out of the city centre, you provide park and rides on the outskirts, so the people who are coming in for day-long parking can park there and be bussed in. You don't purge the people coming in from rural areas. Thank you.
Harrington, I wonder whether you wanted to comment on the park and ride and the plans we've got for transport.
We have got plans for better park and rides. We've got a master plan coming up which will deal with that strategy of allowing people who have to use their cars to come in and to have good places to park that are not excessively expensive. And those that want to come into the centre of town will pay more. I mean, we're talking about inflationary rises primarily. That we have to manage our spaces because we want people to be able to get to shops. We don't want people to be going round and round 15 times to try and find a spot because other people are parking there and using that space up. So it's a balance. But I agree with you entirely. We need park and rides. We need better bus services. Unfortunately, our bid for 18 million was completely thrown out by the government. So it's a real struggle to get that balance.
Councillor Harvey, did you want to comment?
Yes, I'd like to just comment on Councillor Lester's words and also Councillor Matthews. I'm grateful for Councillor Lester's sympathy for my position as the Cabinet Member for Finance. Given his comments, I'd like to ask a question of him in terms of whether he is supportive of the Conservative government's expectation that councils maximise their local tax raising through the maximum increase, applying the maximum increase on council tax uplift, which is an assumption in the local government settlement. It's good that he supports growing the economy, and I hope he's going to have some positive things to say when we get to the agenda item on the big economic plan. Of course, a large part of growing the economy is stifled at the moment because we're having to sweep up and deal with problems that we've inherited to do with pollution of our river systems, and that's another problem that we've inherited that we are having to tackle, and that is having a severe impact on not only our local developer community, but is also having an impact of over £300 million assessed in terms of damaging our local economy. So, it's a shame that that's the situation we find ourselves in. But we're not shying away from it. We're just rolling up our sleeves and getting on with it. I hear what you're saying in terms of being sceptical that savings can be achieved. We have plans to oversee the delivery of the savings programme, and those will be coming under close review, and you and your group will continue to have the opportunity in opposition to examine our progress on that through the quarterly performance reports that continue to be published. Councillor Matthews, I hear what you say in terms of wanting to deliver, to do more for ourselves, while not wishing to declare UDI for Herefordshire, this isn't a passport to Pimlico situation. However, Herefordshire, is good at, finding its own solutions to its own problems. But, again, that has to come with improved economic growth, and we're having to tackle problems that are getting in the way of that. So, I look forward to your group supporting the big economic plan later on in the programme, and what we're doing to try and address the issues that we've inherited that are getting in the way of taking the county forward economically.
Councillor Lester, I don't know whether you want to take the opportunity to respond to being named.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether you want to respond. You were named.
Oh, well, always. This cabinet isn't a debating forum, is it, for group leaders? But seeing as Councillor Harvey quite kindly asked the question, I would just simply say this, and it's this council's decision whether they go with 4.99%, nobody else's, and that's what the debate will be about on the 10th of February. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, move on, if I may, to Councillor Wilding, and then I'll come to Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. So we'd all prefer to pay less council tax, of course, but we're realists and recognise that we're going to have to balance the budget, and we will need to follow the Conservative government's guidance that we should increase the council tax by that full amount. But as we've discussed earlier, we do, however, take much comfort from the 100% reduction scheme, which is a targeted scheme to help our residents most in need. One other thing I just feel I must point out, though, that is that although there is some provision in this budget for funding for our climate and ecological we are unable to allocate the kind of sums that we're going to need to address the climate emergency. And that is an elephant in the room that's just being buried under everything else. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, when you called me, my screen was frozen on Councillor Lester. I don't know why, no sound. Much pleasure it gave me. There's an awful lot of humbug talked at budget time about how well the administration is doing at the time and how the opposition always are concerned about the way in which money has been spent. And I think that's what the public are concerned about. Why and how we're spending the money. We see schemes that make the public very, very unhappy at the moment, happening in Herefordshire, and are very worried about. We just remember that it's all very well to say we bemoan the government's reduction in funding, and it is very, very difficult now because of the enormous sums of money that have been taken away from all local government, and they're having to find it in other ways. One way is to have to bid for central government for specific projects. Sometimes are not the best way in which to spend the money that is necessary within the county, but we have to jump to that tune at the moment, and the enormous expense of doing that, and sometimes the inefficiency in the way in which Herefordshire especially have done some of these projects. But the debate will be on at the full council, and the decision will be made. I do recall the last budget I presented to the council many, many years ago. The Conservative opposition at the time, on the morning of the debate, introduced an amendment, a reduction of 1%, I think it was, in the figure, with a list of savings that would all be occurred. When they came into office, not one of those did they introduce. So I look forward to the debate on February.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think that concludes that. Thank you, everybody. I've been asked to comment from Councillor Balderson. Councillor Balderson apologises. She's not able to attend this meeting, but has asked me to place on record the committee's thanks for all of the cabinet members and corporate directors for their pre-recorded explanatory narratives provided to the committee ahead of the meeting on the 17th of January. The committee is also very grateful for the cabinet member for finance, corporate services and planning for the rapid review of and the positive draft responses to the committee's recommendations. And she said, we look forward to hearing the debate about your budget proposals and your formal response to the recommendations. The recommendations have been responded to in the papers which have come to council, to the cabinet. So I will, if I may, put the recommendations to the cabinet. There's just one small change at the very end. So we recommend to council for approval the council tax base of 71,073.11 Band-D equivalents, an increase in core council tax of 2.99%. C, an additional precept in respect of adult social care of 2% applied to council tax, resulting in a total tax increase of 4.99%. In the balanced revenue budget proposal totaling £193.3 million, subject to any amendments approved. Haven't been any amendments at this meeting. Specifically, the net spending limits for each directorate as set out in Appendix C. E, the revenue budgets including £4 million for all ages social care to fund edge of care and prevention services for all ages, and the continuation of support for low-income households. F, delegates to the Section 151 officer the power to make necessary changes to the budget arising from any variations in central government funding allocations via general reserves. G, the medium-term financial strategy and TFS for the period 2023-24 to 26-27, that's Appendix A. And H, the Treasury Management Strategy at Appendix D be approved. And finally, this is where the change is. So the responses to scrutiny committee recommendations in the supplementary paper be approved. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 9 is the capital investment budget and capital strategy update. The purpose of this is to recommend to council for approval the capital investment budget and capital strategy for 2023-24 onwards. The report starts on page 279, and I'll pass again to Councillor Harvey to introduce this item.
Thank you, Leader. I shall be brief. The current approved capital programme and forecast outturn is provided at Appendix B to the Cabinet report. And to this programme, we propose to add for £46 million of projects outlined in paragraph 5 of the report and detailed at Appendix A. In total, this comprises a work programme to be undertaken in 2023 of around £140 million. This programme is funded from a range of sources, including government grants, return on investments and corporate borrowing. All projects in the programme have been approved based on both a case of business need from the service area and in terms of a business case detailing our approach to deliver it. And these business cases are for all new programmes provided in the agenda pack and included as an appendix to this report. Not all bids for funding have made it through this review process, and for those that have fallen short, more work will be done to assess need and to understand options both to afford and to deliver. The programme presented in a time of financial constraint continues prudently to deliver a wide range of community infrastructure, transport, education, public realm, economic development, heritage and social care investments to strengthen and improve daily life for residents across the county and to underpin the delivery of the services of this council. I'll open up the debate for comment from Cabinet colleagues.
Whether Cabinet colleagues want to address their particular portfolios, any particular thoughts? Councillor Davis, I can't see if you have your hand raised.
I do.
Right, Councillor.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Harvey, again for that. I would ask, I suppose if I ask now, and then I'll go through my areas if it's okay. Just for anybody that's listening, you know that I think the budget's difficult enough for people that know what they're talking about, let alone people that don't have to deal with such complex budgets. You know, most of us will struggle to work out how much to spend each week on bills and look at it at the size of our organisation. So some people may look at it and go, what the heck, you're spending £18 million on waste vehicles. Why can't you just take that £18 million and put it into the revenue budget, and then we won't have to have all of these savings? And I just wondered if you could explain, or Andrew Lovegrove, you know, why that can't actually happen.
Yes, as Councillor Davis says, there are very particular rules about revenue spend and capital spend, and we cannot use capital allocation, capital funding for revenue activities. So the money to buy the new vehicles, which is a capital activity, that's an asset we will acquire and have, is funding from a capital funding source. So the rules are very clear. We cannot use that for paying the revenue costs of paying wages and those type of expenses. It's one of the very strict rules that local government has to operate in. It's further complicated because we can use revenue money to buy capital items, but you can't go the other way.
Thank you for that, Andrew, much appreciated, and I'm sure people who are listening, that will help them as well. So within the capital funding, I'd like to raise a couple of items that are new within the capital funding. So firstly, I've talked about equalities and how important it is to have an equalities-based budget, and I'm really pleased to see that this is extending out into our capital projects. So firstly, you will see a schools accessibility amount. So this was to adapt up to 6 schools so that they can meet the physical needs of learners with special educational needs. Now this is so important as we try to move away from having segregated schools, and we try to have it as people with different needs can still attend mainstream schools if we get it right. There's something called the social model of disability, and I really implore any of you to go and read about it. And it talks about that people aren't disabled, but it's the environment around them that makes them disabled, and no so much so than in schools. So really delighted that we've got 6 schools this year and a potential other. Just a word of warning, within the papers it says names of the schools. It's as accurate as we can make it at the moment. As you're aware, school selections won't have happened yet, so there may be changes on where that school is, but we know that the child is going to be in Herefordshire, so that's all covered. The next one is around schools maintenance and our school maintenance projects, and I really would like to say thank you to the officers within that area and around the work that they've been trying to do to undertake surveys to make sure that our property works are done at the right time, and I know how much work's gone into it. certainly over the last 2 years since Quinton's been in there, but also with Karen there. And so this will seek to remove all priority 1 items from the 2019 conditions surveys, which I know I've mentioned before around that the huge surveys that we had done in 2019. But this also will cover current emergency works. Alongside the schools maintenance project is the estate building improvement programme. So, you know, I will hark back to what we were talking about before around revenue and where we get money from, etc. Every year I've seen, I looked at the budgets on estates for capital, and every year there was an attack on it. You know, let's take some of the money away from that. And what happens is you don't stop the buildings getting worse. You just create a longer list and a bigger problem later on down the line. So now what we're seeking to do is address this system via the strategic asset review, which we should hear soon. But our priority projects are going to be delivered over 2023 and to 2025. And some of them being prioritised as failure to address the necessary property investment risks, which risk service delivery, and also a breach of statutory compliance. So these are things that we must do rather than we would like to do. These are absolutely essential. I've quickly discussed before about the capital financing for the purchase of a new waste collection fleet, and also to install electric vehicle charging infrastructure at our 2 waste collection depots. Just want to say, you know, people say, why on earth are you spending that much money? We absolutely have to. So we've engaged with specialists who have advised us that in order for us to achieve, firstly, the right amount of interest from contractors, but also to make sure that we are not paying over, you know, over the odds. It makes much more financial sense for us to make this outlay now and achieve better sums and better value in the contract itself, which will come as a revenue cost. So the other things that are within our capital programme are all still there, so they shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. So we're looking at things such as works on the Brookfield School, our internationally recognised redevelopment of the museum and the art gallery, and also our relocation of the library to Maylord Orchard. So those are some of the things that are already in there. Hopefully there won't be any surprise, but I thought I would outline the ones beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other contributions? I did actually, I know there's 6.3 million towards the transport hub in this budget. Of course, the money we've got from Levelling Up might assist us with that. Between now and that's when it goes to full council, we might want to make some amendments to consider what we might do. So that might be potentially good news. So I think I'll go to the group leaders, if I may. So starting off, Councillor James.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Certainly, well, I don't know if you're in the TARDIS, Councillor James. Sound a bit like
Sorry?
You want to try?
Leader,
Hello?
it might be better if Councillor James turns off his camera, because it's coming up here that it's because of the bandwidth.
Yeah, okay. One moment.
Councillor Lester will miss your face, I think, Councillor James.
Yes. Well, I've made some people happy anyway. Can I say, we wait and see, and the debate will take place at the council. I do think we're getting too much into the minutiae of individual projects and schemes and services, and not looking at the actual budget itself. And that's the concern. And my concern is more about how we actually implement these capital projects. That we don't go, as seems to be the norm, over budget on so many of these schemes, if not all of the schemes. And so I look forward to the debate at council.
Councillor James, thank you. I think Councillor Harvey would like to respond.
Yes, I'd like to come back again and ask Councillor James to identify which programmes in this capital works programme are going over budget as far as he's concerned. If you're going to keep repeating these allegations, you really do need to back them up with examples. And as a matter of fact, the delivery of this programme is not part of the budget any more than, you know, querying an individual programme. If you want to look at the budget in the round and the programme in the round, please go ahead and do that.
I only have to say one thing, St Owen Street. And it's no good Councillor Harvey saying, oh, we've added things to it to get the budget. When you start a project, you have to stick to what it's going to cost, not go hundreds of thousands of pounds over. We're not in those times when we can afford that sort of thing.
Councillor Harrington, you may want to respond.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Leader and Councillor James. We didn't go over budget. We had to change the specification because the government changed the rules on how you segregate pedestrians from cyclists and from traffic. So the budget went up. We then decided at the same time that it would be pointless to bring in that improvement and not resurface the entire St Owen Street, which we did at the same time. Unfortunately, the way it was published, and we're probably at fault with that slightly as a communications team, was that it was taken as read by quite shoddy journalism as being an overspend. But I take his greater point that we need to make sure that we manage budgets, because it is vitally important to make sure we have the capacity in-house to make sure that these projects are being delivered correctly. And part of the way that we are changing the public realm contract is to make sure that we have more technical staff inside the Herefordshire Council so that we can monitor things more closely. So I take his point.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. I'll move on to Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Well, we welcome any capital investment in Herefordshire schools, and that's very welcome. And Councillor Davis has talked about that, and that's a really good thing. This council's got a good track record of delivering. Not everything can't magically transform every single school, but good track record of improvement and investment in schools. And it's welcome that this continues to be a key feature of the capital investment programme. Like I said earlier on in the agenda paper, it notes a £9.5 million increase in the estimated local transport grant from government, and that's to be welcomed and increased. And it's also welcome news that the Levelling Up programme has given money towards a Hereford project. So thanks to government again. So all positive stuff. I seem to remember a debate and line of inquiry at the Scrutiny Board Management Committee's scrutinising of the capital projects, just to sore thumb really the thought that are all these capital projects really the progression of them, are we all confident that we've adequately embraced the impact of inflation in these projects? Because the longer these projects take to come to fruition, the more they're at risk of inflationary costs. So the question really is, and I think it was Councillor Shaw's question originally, are we confident that these proposals have really embraced the impact that inflation may have? Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Harding.
Well, I'll reiterate the response I gave to Councillor Shaw in the scrutiny meeting. The detailed business cases for each of these new capital projects are in Appendix E to the report, and they do contain contingency figures. So those contingencies are there to reflect a range of uncertainties, including the impact of inflation. The faster your government can get inflation down, the better, I would say. As far as the existing programme is concerned, of course, that is a worry, and one of the reasons that that we're project managing much more tightly, because we have a project management office in place now, is to identify and highlight those issues early and do what we can to mitigate and address them.
Thank you. Pass to Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Leader. First of all, excuse me, I welcome the school improvement programme. I noticed that Craigmill is benefiting, and so I'm very pleased by that. It's something they've been asking for some time, so I warmly welcome that. I also, Councillor Lester mentioned it, but we did get close on 20 million for the levelling up, so all right, we worked hard for it, but at least we got it, so that project wouldn't be going ahead if we didn't, so we've got to show appreciation when we do get it. Could somebody explain to me, it says on page 410 on this document, demolition Blackfriars Street football stand. What exactly does that mean? Just a demolition of it, or are there plans in place to replace it and bring that area up to scratch? Because the football club brings a lot of publicity and a lot of goodwill into the county. I think we should do everything we can to help to support it and get it as high up in the leagues as possible. So could somebody explain that, please?
Councillor Harvey or Mr. Ludgrove, do you have any? You're very good into the detail, Councillor Matthews.
Refurbishment, isn't it?
Leader, if we look on page 410, there is a box to the right that explains the rationale. So that is talking about either refurbishing it or dealing with the property. So I haven't got the exact details to hand me, but I think the explanation has highlighted the survey has recognised that that structure is probably at the end of its life and something needs to be done for it.
Yeah, I read that, Leader, but I was hoping somebody could enlighten us on what's planned to upgrade that end of the Edgar Street, because as I said, like there was some proposals that there'd be a new stand with, I think, office accommodation on the top and a new improved stand. I know that was all drawn up, and I was wondering if there was any. I read that, and I wondered whether that was just a starter thing, and that was the intention to deliver that.
Yes, we as administration have looked at developing that site, and the plan was to have the charitable organisations or retail on the bottom, and then further up to have accommodation, some of which might have been for support workers and that kind of thing, and then there would be a new stand. The figures didn't work out. I think we had to continue to look at it, see what other opportunities that there might be. It would be fantastic to see Hereford Football Club rising up through the tables. I reflect a little bit on Lincoln City. Their football club is doing really well. They've got a university, a little bit like as we are aspiring to. So it'd be a nice thing we could follow on the footsteps as Lincoln. So it's something we will consider. It looks as if this isn't actually talking about redeveloping it, it's a matter of making it safe. So thank you for your.
Thank you. I did get a phone call about it, and so I'm glad what you say. Obviously, the intention and the interest is to get it put back into some sort of proper working state.
Well, it's not the most delightful view from
no, exactly.
Supermarket.
And as I say, when you look at it, it brings a lot of income into the county in various ways, like
Councillor Chance.
Yeah, I'll leave it like that for now because there's an awful lot in there, and we'll follow it up in that way.
Councillor,
yeah, just not to labour this. I mean, Bob has picked up on 1 out of 24 items in the Building Improvement Works programme. It's 110,000 that's allocated to that over 2 years. And as it says, that stand is currently unused. You know, I would assume, I don't know the details, but I would assume that that's a potential allocation for safety critical works to be done on that bit of infrastructure. There's a long-term process of engagement with the football club to, consider what can be done to redevelop that end of the ground. But I just want to avoid anybody setting any hairs running about anything happening in the football club, because that's absolutely not what this says.
Thank you. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you, Leader. I'm having to keep my camera off, by the way, because my.
Oh, there it goes. Come back to it.
Well, he won't probably come back on that.
Okay. Well, put this then to the votes. Recommendations are set out in the report. Cabinet members, are you in favour? All in favour, thank you. Now, before we get to item 10, one of the questioners was not available at the start of the meeting, and I'm aware that she has a supplemental question, and I wonder whether arrangements be made to either put that on the screen or to read it out. Ms. Reid, do you wish to?
So, Leader, Ms. Reid is going to write a supplementary question to us. We will publish that as part of the minutes and provide a response. Ms. Reid has also highlighted the late response to the first question she placed. So we'll give her a written explanation as that's part of the email that we sent back to her.
Mr. Walker, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's right to apologise for the late arrival of that response. And there was an initial response that was prepared. I didn't think that was full and complete enough. So the opportunity to make sure we had the full information that was required. But I do apologise for the late arrival of that information.
Right, well, we'll move on then. I think I made to item 10, the big economic plan. This is to approve the Herefordshire Big Economic Plan and accompanying initial 5-year delivery plan for 2023 to 2028, and to explore the principle of developing a place-focused partnership board to lead the implementation of the Big Economic Plan and other associated key strategies, embedding a cross-county partnership approach to achieving the county's opportunities and seeking public and private investment required in order to achieve our ambitions. The report starts on page 557, and for those who have the time to look at the branded version of the plan document, which has been published as a supplement. Councillor Chowns.
Leader,
Yeah,
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I need to go back to work now. So can I give my apologies for the rest of the meeting, please?
Thank you, Councillor Davis, for being able to attend so much of this meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Chowns, yeah.
Great.
Sounds like a swimming pool.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I'm really delighted to present to Cabinet the 2050 Economic Plan, and I have a physical copy here, beautifully designed up, so very many thanks to colleagues who've produced that. Just before I go on to introducing this, I just want to kind of, lead in. There was a question raised earlier by a colleague who shall remain nameless regarding, what have this administration done for the local economy? And I just wrote a few notes on the back of an envelope while I was here, and I thought I'd run through a few of those things. So since I became Cabinet Member for Economy and Environment less than 3 years ago, we've had a really rapid rolling out of the COVID grants, not just the ones that central government told us what to do with, but the ones where we decided ourselves how they would best support the local economy, and immense gratitude for that and support for that among so many local businesses. That was just mentioned at a business event just the other night. We've had a massive reinvestment in developing the visitor economy, real rebrand of Visit Herefordshire, which has been super successful in attracting more people to visit the county and to become, enthused with what a wonderful place it is, and maybe more of them will come to live and work here. We've had the Shop Local initiative, where we put more than £1 million of COVID recovery money into the pockets of residents to support local shops and businesses to help regenerate the economy as we were emerging out of COVID. We've had free buses for about a year over the weekend to help people to get into the towns, rejuvenating our high street. We've had great places to live investment and regenerating high streets investment that was sent out to each of the market towns to decide what they wanted to do with. Really innovative projects there. We helped all of the market towns to write market town investment plans and take proposals in there. We've had the Levelling Up Fund success that we talked about earlier today. We've got £22.6 million of Stronger Towns funding. Ours is possibly one of the most community-led Stronger Towns bids in the whole country. Really, really exciting project coming through there. We've got money from the Shared Prosperity Fund and Rural Prosperity Fund coming on stream now. That is helping to support business advice, investment in innovation, energy efficiency, business diversification. We've been running the Marches Growth Hub, providing lots of ongoing support to our local businesses. We've invested massively in developing wetlands to unlock housing development in the county. We've established the Shell Store incubator space, which is now thriving. We've supported NMITE, which is going from strength to strength, and our other colleges with specialist focus, which themselves are developing fantastic business links and helping to develop that innovative economy. We have rolled out Fastershire further and faster, leading to us actually having a better than national average rate of full fibre. We've been supporting skills development, bringing together higher education and businesses to strategise on that. We've been running regular business fora in every market town. We've just done a whole slew of them in January, and we've developed far better business engagement than I think has been the case for many years for this council. And I'd like to pay tribute to all of the colleagues who've been involved in that, officers, fellow councillors, and also to all of the business and other stakeholders that have worked so closely and developed such excellent, strong partnerships with Herefordshire Council, of which this is the latest manifestation. Now, the 2050 Economic Plan, it sets out a vision for where we want the county to get to in 2050, 27 years from now, and it comes accompanied with a draft 5-year delivery plan that sets out how we translate these kind of big ideas into practical steps. Now, we're bringing it today to Cabinet to approve, but it's really important for us all to recognise this isn't just a council document at all. It's actually been developed in a really kind of broad partnership process. It's a strategy for the county as a whole. The council is a key stakeholder in driving forward the process, convening the board that have helped to drive it, funding the work that was done by consultants to support it. But this is a really collectively owned strategy, which is the product of a lot of consultation and engagement from dozens of businesses, many interviews with key stakeholders, multiple engagements with existing networks and groups, and an online survey that was sent out to thousands of people. So, the Metro Dynamics, who have led on actually kind of writing this, have done a really good job in reaching out to all of these audiences and have been very, very conscious of the need to ensure that we hear the voices of all the key stakeholders in Herefordshire. Young and old, businesses, voluntary sector, skills sector, all sorts of people. And I'd like to thank Metro Dynamics for all their hard work on this, as well as all of the members of the Herefordshire Sustainable Growth Strategy Board, which has driven this. And those members have freely given up a lot of their very valuable time to drive this process and work collaboratively to develop the plan. So the plan kind of reviews the challenges that we face in Herefordshire. We do face challenges. We face challenges in terms of relatively low levels of productivity, low average wages, lower levels of higher skills, and indeed significant skill shortages for businesses that want to employ people. We have big traditional industries like agriculture that are facing significant change. We're all affected by the current kind of national and global economic uncertainties, and we all, public and private sector alike, we need to address the climate and ecological emergency. At the same time, we're a county of fantastic opportunity, and that list of projects that I talked about earlier just highlights some of those. We've got absolutely thriving micro and small business base. The vast majority of our businesses here locally are micro and small businesses, and they are an incredibly strong foundation for our local economy. We've got real specialisms in areas like food and drink, kind of diversifying from the agricultural base. We've got growing areas like cybersecurity, becoming more and more a tourism destination. We've got real kind of strengths in the sort of creative and digital economies, which we're building on further. Growing strengths in areas like higher education, and of course, unprecedented opportunities in the transition to a green economy. And so this big economic plan, 2050 economic plan, sets out our priorities and how we're going to move towards them. Its vision, read this text out so I get it absolutely right. The vision is in 2050, Herefordshire is a vibrant, healthy, zero carbon and inclusive place to live, work, study and visit at all stages of life. Our rural communities, market towns and university city are thriving with high quality employment, housing and services. A high technology, higher value and creative economy has enabled living standards to rise, and we have protected our rich natural environment. So that's a statement of where we want to be in 2050. Collectively, the council, businesses and all of the sectors working together, we share this vision. And a key message throughout the whole process of developing this plan has been that, we're not focused on economic growth at all costs. What we're focused on is creating a sustainable opportunity that offers better opportunities for everybody at all stages of life, focusing on developing quality of life and increasing standards of living in a sustainable way. And we're really conscious also of the way that this document interacts with key other strategies. And in fact, towards the end of this document, there's a page that sets out exactly where the interactions are. Now, the key thing, the key sort of structuring framework for this 2050 economic plan is it's focused on what's called the 6 capitals model, which is actually a model that's very much used in the government's Levelling Up white paper, developed by a couple of Cambridge economists. And it focuses on 6 areas of capital that we need to develop, and they are people, community and partnerships, natural capital, environment and climate change as we've called it, enterprise, infrastructure and investment, public and private. And we've identified priority areas and kind of themes and actions that we want to develop under each of those, and those are in the delivery plan. We've also identified 5 new ways of working, kind of cross-cutting approaches that we want to take forward to deliver this plan, and they include taking an even more proactive and purposeful approach to land use planning. They include a real commitment to growing and retaining value locally. So we as a council a couple of years ago came up with a social value strategy. What we really want are committed, all of the stakeholders involved in this are committed to making sure that we develop those opportunities to kind of develop the local circular economy, to kind of retain value in local supply chains. Third principle is about a proposal to establish a new Herefordshire Economy and Place Board to take on the work that the Sustainable Growth Strategy Board has developed in developing this. And that would be a strategic public-private partnership which will share responsibility for driving this forward. And then we want to help local businesses to scale up and grow, to support existing county-based businesses to maximise their potential. And we also want to encourage new businesses to come to Herefordshire. So we'll develop and deliver a new approach to encouraging that inward investment, marketing ourselves as a place, this wonderful place to live, work, visit and study, and to ensure that we get maximum kind of investment into our beautiful county to maximise opportunities for everybody going forward. So I am really pleased to recommend this document warmly to Cabinet colleagues. I do hope that you will approve this and the initial draft 5-year delivery plan. So the delivery plan is it's in draft format at the moment. It's actually very detailed and kind of set out, but what we're proposing is that we will set up this Economy and Place Board, this public-private partnership, which will take it forward and will really nail down the details of that going forward. So I warmly recommend this to colleagues and look forward to any questions. Very happy to answer. Thank you.
A whistle-stop tour there.
Sorry, did I speak too fast?
No, you were very, very enthusiastic. Yes. Very good. So, Councillor Crockett.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Chains, for your energy and passion. Yesterday I attended the community partnership meeting at the Kindle Centre, and Roger Allenby, who's been leading on this programme and project, also delivered a passionate plea to all of the attendees there. It's great to hear and see such passion for our county, and I applaud the 5-year plan. I think one thing that came to fruition yesterday was the 6 elements that came out in this programme, and there was a really good debate at that meeting as well. So there was no negativity about it. Everything is positive. So come on, 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colleague. And I should have said, I think Roger Allenby is with us online, and we've got Ross Cook here as well. So if anyone wants to ask any questions.
I didn't see him on there, but, you know, big him up.
Well done, Roger.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Chance, for that really passionate, comprehensive walk through the history of the plan and how we've come about what we've got in front of us today. And I really welcome the work that you and the economic development team have been doing to help to rebalance investment and planning for economic growth. Hereford has received an awful lot of investment in past years, particularly in the enterprise zone, but in other areas also. And the market towns have lost out. And the work that you and the team have done over the last 4 years to set things in motion to ensure that we can bring forward employment opportunities in the market towns, that where houses are coming forward, we're also bringing jobs and employment opportunities forward, so people don't have to travel to work. They can have ambition to be able to work where they live. And that is really important, part from also a sort of live-work balance and a healthy lifestyle perspective, to make sure that people can have the right kind of work-life balance in the future and spend less time travelling in order to get to work. So I think those market town economic development plans that have already been developed are fantastic and are really excellent appendices, if you like, to the big 2050 vision for the county as a whole. And I'm a big fan of having delivery plans that follow on from strategies. In years gone by, this council was good at developing strategies, well, it was good at writing and publishing them, but then the implementation plans didn't necessarily follow on behind. And I'm really glad to see that we've got here, sitting alongside the publication of this plan out to 2050, a really good delivery plan looking for the next 5 years, how we're actually going to take this forward and make it happen. And, let's have more of those kind of pairings of plan and delivery documents for everything that we're doing as a council. Well done.
Any other comments at this stage? What I like so much about this is it's not the council driving this. We've got to a lot of consultation, and I suppose one could pay a bit of lip service to that. But I did hear from one person in the business community who actually said genuinely this felt different. That actually this is about working with the council, with the voluntary services, and everybody to achieve this. And I think that's, for me, that's a real achievement. A real step change for this council to be working so closely and seeing the power of working in partnership with all these organisations. I'll pass now to group leaders. Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, a fine document. Ultimately, only deliverable if there's sufficient money in the public's pocket to be able to sustain the economy and encourage the economy. We saw recently last year more than the whole of local government funding being wiped out within a matter of days, when we had Liz Truss, Chancellor, gave a statement in Parliament which can damage the economy more than anything we can do by policies, plans, etc. So we need to be mindful of the fact that what we do can be wiped out by central government at any time by making the wrong decisions. It looks a good document, and ultimately the proof will be of the pudding will be in the eating. I rather like the document, and I do hope we'll go forward on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Lester.
Yes, thank you. Well, I thank Councillor Chowns in particular for enthusiasm. That's always a great thing. It's good that she acknowledges the levelling up fund that has been given, Stronger Towns Fund, the shared prosperity money. We've had money from the LEP with regard to the wetlands project. So this is all good government money that's come in to help promote Herefordshire. So, you know, having a balanced view about the focus of government, we cannot go without saying that there's been lots and lots of investment for Herefordshire from government, and that still stands, whatever your views on 4.99%. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. We note the plan. We think it's really good to have a vision and a direction, that's essential, and a goal. And this document has the advantage of making those statements. A lot of what is contained in the plan is laudable, and we would agree that better prosperity and sustaining the environment are absolutely vital goals. We do challenge, however, the idea that you can promote a vision for 2050. This council and any council can't reliably predict what will happen in the next several years. And we note there's a plan for the next 5 years. But I think that, you know, reality bites, and we will have to remain flexible given the cost of inflation, fuel bills, and all of the issues, you know, that restrain business and farming. Have to be very practical about having a long-term vision when we will be reacting to events a lot of the time. It's really, we agree that you've got to have a sustainable economy. Just a bit of the flavouring of the document, the monitoring, collective vision, agreed direction. This all sounds a little bit in danger of the council wanting to dictate how the economy should be run. If so, that's very presumptuous. You know, we have to be mindful that this council's got its own financial challenges, and you know, this administration's wanting to increase council tax. So, you know, I hear Councillor Chowns' reassurances about it being, you know, a collaborative approach, but I think we have to be very, very, very careful that we're not trying to impose our ideas on things. I note the notion of a board. We've had improvement boards in this council, and we've seen that they're not as effective as they would have hoped to have been. If this document is a document that is really promoting true partnership, then it's to be very welcome. But I just think this council, through past experience of, as we know, has to be very careful that we don't impose a down approach. Where we think this council plays a critical role in delivering infrastructure and in its application of regulations. The plan does talk about achieving a more reliable and resilient transport network with road and rail and active travel. That's very welcome. We acknowledge that. However, we are of the fundamental belief that without a link road between the A465 and the A49, what was known as the Southern Link Road, and the Western Bypass connecting the A49, the economy will always be held back. Skyline Park is mentioned in the plan. That's very, very important. But without such connectivity, it will always be hampered in its attempts to attract investment and growth. And that's one of the key aspects of this plan. With regard to the council's role in regulation, we believe that we should, you know, be a council that engages as a facilitator that doesn't wrap up businesses in process and red tape. The planning process, for example, should be speedy and positive, and it shouldn't stifle innovation. And the other regulatory functions should aspire to help business and enterprise and farming, and not be a regulatory nightmare that could hamper process. So I think that's where the council can really hone its thinking on how it can really help Herefordshire move forward. So the plan is inclusive and comprehensive in its scope, and that's appreciated. But you know, we think that in future the council should be really focused on playing its part to help the economy rather than try to control it and its processes. So it's absolutely fundamental that this council works well with the independent sector, educational sector, charity and health, and the private sector. And, you know, the good thing about the document is it's not narrowly focused on the economy. It's a more inclusive thing. So that's to be welcome. But where economy is the focus, I'm reminded of the words of a former US president who said that outside its legitimate function, government does nothing as well or economically as the private sector. So those are wise words to bear in mind when taking this enthusiastic plan forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Matthews?
Mr. Neighbours.
That's right.
Councillor Chance, as we've got to expect of you, a high quality comprehensive report, and I thank you for that. And yes, there's some very useful suggestions and recommendations in there, which we wholeheartedly accept. Can I just refer you to key considerations? It goes here, between 15 and 20, the county's gross value added declined by 4.4%, and compared to 2% nationally. The number of jobs available in the county grew by 2.5% compared to 4.5% nationally. So we've been, you know, behind the lines all along, and that's why I was referring to we've got to do something to help to build our local economy. Tourism, as you know, I've always supported you strongly. I think that's something that we can grow, and we don't get the full benefit of the tourism that we should, and we should be working on that. So we are wholeheartedly supported on that. Now I go over to infrastructure. Herefordshire is an important part of the UK. Our labour markets and businesses have strong connections with Powys, South Wales, West Midlands, Malvern, Worcester, Manchester, and all major roads. If you talk to the business people like I do, at every seminar that I've attended with them, the first thing they tell me before we can get this county growing is improved infrastructure. When we put it to a vote, 80% of them said that's what we want. So until what you're proposing here is excellent, but it's got to be combined with improved infrastructure, because most business contractors and travel firms won't come near Hereford. That's one place they always like to avoid because of the congestion. So what you're saying there, warmly welcome it, and it's got our support. But until we deal with the real major issue, which is infrastructure, this county goes nowhere.
Councillor Chance, I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Well, there's an entire section in the document on infrastructure and in the delivery plan on infrastructure, and indeed the document points out that congestion issues are due to too many short journeys and everything being done by car, and we have infrastructure processes in place to address that and help with the modal shift. On the point about the statistics that you cherry-picked out of paragraph 2, I would point out that, well, anyway, you know, the first one's from 2015 to 2020, which was mainly before this administration came in. But I wouldn't blame the previous administration for that relative decline at all. That sort of, you know, cherry-picking of statistics isn't helpful to the debate at all. Actually, there is a really long term, and in fact, it goes back hundreds of years. I've said this before in one of these meetings. If you go to Hereford Town Hall, and they've got a little museum-y bit there, and there's data there on the differentials between wages in Herefordshire versus the national and regional averages, going back, you know, in the 18th century, I think it is. So, you know, these are kind of structural issues that we have to address, plus national averages are pushed up by much higher wages in metropolitan centres, particularly in London. So we have to be really careful about how we kind of trace statistics. What's really important is that we have identified in this document, and by we, I mean collectively, all of the people involved in this, not the council at all. You know, it's been me and a couple of officers in rooms full of business and skills sector leaders and so forth coming up with these proposals. This absolutely isn't a council-driven document at all. It's a collectively owned document. And what it does is identify what we need to do for that vision for 2050. And I would just say to my colleagues that it's actually our job as politicians to have a long-term vision. We might have to kind of, you know, navigate the waves of things that come at us, like what a certain councillor talked about with decisions made by Liz Truss, or what might be happening with inflation, but it is our job as politicians to have a long-term vision, and that's why I'm really proud to have worked with colleagues in the business and skills and voluntary sector to come up with this this proposal. And if anybody, reads this and thinks it's about, council imposing its will on the economy or trying to control the economy, they clearly haven't read the document at all, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you.
Mr. Harrington.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just on the infrastructure and the transport related issues, which I agree with both Councillor Lester and Councillor Matthews, that we do need to make sure that we have better infrastructure. Unfortunately, the Western Bypass, which couldn't get very far, certainly didn't get to progressing a business case of any merit after 12 odd years of the previous administration spending quite a lot of money on it, and wouldn't be delivered for at least a decade, would come with a huge amount of housing in a particular area of Hereford and cause further congestion, certainly have induced demand after a while. We don't believe that's the right thing to do, and more like Councillor Matthews, although he's also expressing some concern, we would prefer to have the resilience of an extra bridge in the east, which is what business leaders have always told me. And maybe I'm surprised I haven't seen Bob at as many seminars, but I'll probably go into the different ones. And when I spoke to business people on Rotherwest in particular, they will send their goods on the motorway system through Ross. They are more interested in finding in reducing the congestion, and that is where the resilience plus the critical modal shift that we have to do to make sure that we give people opportunities to travel a shorter distance in Hereford by a different way if they can, so that others, as I said, who have to live further out, or who do live further out and have to travel in by car, are able to have the benefit of that reduction. Just interestingly, we talk about congestion in Hereford, it is bad, but there's an index called the INRIX index, and it shows that Worcester is the 27th most congested city. Let's have a look. 27th most congested city in the world. Herefordshire is nowhere near in that list. So it's a case of being sensible and realistic. And we have a huge amount of people who want to come to Hereford, especially to the enterprise zone. And I give credit to the previous administration for being so heavily involved in that, who are desperate to come here from other places like Gloucester and Worcester. So it's that balance. But I know he's always gone on about the critical need for that resilience of an eastern link, and that is what we're working on very hard.
Can I come back very briefly, Leader? Yeah, all I was going to say is Councillor Chowns and Councillor Harrington's idea, bring them together and you've got it right.
You did it together. Right. Good. Okay, so Councillor Wilding, I think you're the last on this one. Councillor Wilding, I think you might have.
Sure, if we've lost him.
Liz Truss has often been mentioned a number of times, and she was desperate for growth. We have to grow, and I think as a result of her wanting to do that so quickly, that's caused absolute awful problems for us. Growth is good, and it's interesting. I think some of the feedback I've heard about consultation is that the businesses in Hereford do want growth, but not at all cost. They want good growth, and I think it's fantastic that we have a community that also seeks that. So we need to work with them. We don't want the Liz Truss kind of growth. I don't think we want something which is more measured, thought about in a decent plan like this, and we'll work on that over the next 5 years or more. So I'll put this recommendation to the vote. So the recommendations are set out in the report. Cabinet members, are you in favour? Hands, thank you very much. So we'll move to the last item, which is item 11, appointments of Cabinet members to the Shareholder Committee. Cabinet approved the setting up of a Shareholder Committee at its meeting on the 12th of January. This report seeks Cabinet nomination of 4 named members of Cabinet to serve on the Shareholder Committee. And I'll pass to you, Councillor Harvey, again.
Yes, and I'd like to nominate you, Leader, and myself, Councillor Crockett and Councillor Davis. And really that's trying to get a balance across finance, contracts, the care sector, which Hoople are entering in terms of starting to provide services, new services to the council. And with my corporate services hat on, a lot of the services that Hoople particularly provides the council at the moment are in my portfolio area. So as a starting position for the shareholder committee, I think that covers a range of the cabinet portfolio stakeholding in the organisations that the committee is set up to oversee.
Do I have any alternative proposals? Anybody going to stand back? Councillor Crockett, are you delighted to be nominated in this list?
No, I accept that.
Councillor Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Will there be any substitutes? Because I'm happy to substitute at any time if necessary.
The paperwork that came to the last cabinet meeting had a full sort of set of heads of terms for the committee, and that included the mechanism for substituting in the event that there are interests or one of the shareholder members isn't able to attend. So that's built into the way that the committee's been set up.
So all those in favour?
I think we can.
I think we can vote.
We can vote for some. We've definitely got to vote for either.
Someone will tell us off for that nature of this.
Are we advice? Do we vote? Do we not vote?
Chair, through you, Chair. It's fine. Can members hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine for you to vote on this because you are in a public capacity, and you're just members of cabinet voting for a committee of cabinet. It's no problem for you voting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so thank you everyone for attending. The next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, the 23rd of February. I will now formally close the meeting. All members of the public are requested to leave the building. Please ensure that you've taken all your personal belongings with you. Please have confirmation that the live stream has stopped.